And good morning, everybody. We're live. Congratulations. You made it through the week. Another amazing week of food safety, food quality, super awesome products that we all know and love because everybody eats. And when you work in quality assurance and food safety, we're the unsung heroes of the world because everybody just expects, Jose, that their food is fine, but we know that is not the case. And today, we want to say thank you for all that you did this last week to help keep us safe and produce awesome food. If you're new to the chat, welcome. Pull up a chair. My name is Bryan Armentrout, and this is the Food Safety Chat Live. And every Friday at 8 a.m. Mountain Time, 10 a.m. Eastern, we live stream on LinkedIn and YouTube. And we have a discussion, not a presentation, on a food safety topic. And the best part of this, aside from you attending the chat with us, is I get to bring an amazing guest on like Jose Sabal, who is the president of Sabal Food Safety Consulting. Jose, how are you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing great, Bryan. Thank you for asking. I can see that you're doing great too.
Yes, and it's. I'm always happy. It's when you're on the show, it's great because one of my rules anytime you're sharing information is if I learn one new thing that I can apply, that's a win. And every time I talk with you, there's something new that you're doing. There's a new piece of information, and you get my wheels spinning all the time. And it's not our discussion here for today, but you were talking about what you're doing with ChatGPT and AI and food safety, and it is amazing. If out there, if you're not looking into this space, you need to be doing this. And Jose is at the front of what's going on with this. So keep up that good work. And people are coming in here. Elena, good morning. Duncan is here. Looks like Duncan's in a Australian mood with his good day there. Nice. So I'm in Loveland, Colorado, and Elena is in the Denver area as well. And of course, Duncan is over in England, so it's always great seeing him. Nice of him to join us. Morgan is on the East Coast. Isn't it great that we're actually learning the people who join the chat, a little bit about them and where they're at in the world, which I think is one of the best part of the chats, Jose.
I believe so. Yes, the thing about internet and the video chats and Zoom and Teams and whatever, this is amazing.
Yes, it really is. It's come so far.
Yeah, it's not anymore time zones. Well, I mean, there is a limitation still, but time zones done.
True, very true. Now you're in South Florida. How's your weather been?
Oh my goodness, beautiful these last days.
Nice. Yesterday afternoon, we had a little bit of snow.
No way, Bryan. Oh my God.
Just kind of flurries, nothing big. It didn't really stick or anything like that. Today, the high temperature is it's going to be 40 degrees, and they're predicting a little bit of snow here again this morning. So
right now we're in 81.
I think you win.
81, and most likely the humidity is going to be close to the 90s.
Nice. So Chris, Joseph, Melina, thank you everybody for joining us here this morning. Fantastic to see everybody. So normally with the notes, so anybody who's familiar with the show, with the cadence of it, we do a prep call. And I try and keep the notes to one page. I found that works very well for the time frame that we have to do our chat. I had to stop Jose at a page and a half, and I'm like, okay, Uncle, no more. What happens in this chat, because we've just got so much to talk about here. Joseph is saying they're getting some flurries and rain tomorrow as well. So look at that.
Wow.
So before we dive in, and we'll get going here right away, is join us everyone for a drink. And I'm assuming, Jose, you have your tea?
Yep, I have it right here.
There we are. Bueno. Cheers.
Salud.
Now, Duncan agrees with us on the importance of these video conferences. Absolutely. I mean, to be able to get with friends like this on Friday mornings all around the world and talk about these important subjects, amazing. Absolutely amazing. Now, of course, it's not a chat, Jose, without the dad joke.
Go ahead.
It is ready. Are you ready for the dad joke?
I'm ready. I'm ready. Bring it in.
Okay, everybody else, here we go. Here's a dad joke. Jose, why did Han Solo not enjoy his steak dinner?
I have no clue.
It was a little chewy. Poor Chewy. Why'd they do that to him? Oh well. So, yeah, joke. Out of the way. Coffee. Out of the way.
Out of the way.
All right. So, Jose, we're going to jump right in here. So much to do. So, it's a Friday morning just like this. You're sitting at your desk, Jose. Everything is looking well. You've got your cup of coffee. You're doing your paperwork from the day before. You're thinking about going out and touring the plant floor and seeing what's going on in the operations. And all of a sudden, across the PA in the plant, you hear a message. Jose Sabal, come to the front office. Jose Sabal, front office. And you're like, ugh, okay, fine. So you get up, you walk through the plant, you go to the front office, and who is standing there waiting for you? FDA, right? So an FDA investigator is standing there in the lobby. He's not sitting, he's standing, and he's got his arms crossed, and he's not looking happy at all. You made him wait 5 minutes, and he doesn't like it in the least bit. So you come up and you introduce yourself. Kind of goes, "Rrr." You go over the GMPs with him, ask him if he'll sign the entry visitor log. He will not. You inspect his badge. You go back to the conference room and you're thinking to yourself, oh, this is not the way I want to start the week, is it?
Yep. Yep. Yeah.
So this is our topic for today. Yeah. Go ahead.
Bryan, and look at this. If you are sure, or as much as possible sure, that you do have a food safety system, a food safety management system that is really working, what is the problem?
Yeah.
None.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, oh, come on, welcome. Let me give you a cup of coffee because you are going to find that we are doing a very good job. That's it.
Yeah. And number one, to your point, exactly right, is if you don't have the right processes and controls in place, you're in trouble no matter what.
Yeah.
And the second one, just like all of these other non-routine activities that happen when you're working in a production facility, is you have to practice and you have to be aware of what's going to happen and how you react to scenarios. We talked about this recently on the chat, Jose, is if you're in the military, what do? They do contingency training. It's like, okay, we're going to take this objective. And in order to do that, we need to do this and this. Well, what if this goes wrong? Okay, then we'll do that. Well, what if the enemy does this? Well, then we'll do that. You need to think about this strategically in terms of how do I manage this encounter? And it needs to be thought about in those ways. And if you don't do that, you're going to your point, Jose, you're going to not be in control of the visit. You're going to be, and this applies for any type of audit, GFSI audit, it doesn't matter who. You have to control the situation and manage it. It doesn't mean that you dominate, but you have to have a plan in place to deal with the encounter, give the investigator the information they need to make them happy, and you have to do it in a way that is professional and clear. And the only way you do that, just like everything in life, is you have to practice. And so today we're going to give everybody a few hints and tips, because I think I know in my practice, Jose, this is something I talk about quite a bit with clients. I'm sure you do as well, is you have to prepare for this. So we'll just dive right in here and start at the beginning. So the FDA investigator, and note, right, they're not inspectors anymore, they are investigators, and they've got their badge. In some cases, if it's serious, they're armed, right? They have guns too. This has happened where FDA investigators will show up at production facilities armed And that's got to be a scary situation. It's very rare, doesn't happen that often, but it can happen if it's serious. So you need to be aware of that as well. So the visit starts before that FDA investigator even walks in the plant, because part of it is a lot of times, and I'm sure you've seen this too, Jose, is they'll just walk around outside and they will, and this is something I like to do when I'm looking at facilities. They'll just start walking around outside the building and checking doors. And if you've got that little smoke area out back where the maintenance guys hang out and have their smoke in the afternoon, they're back there and they start having conversations with people. They're looking for biosecurity issues in your facility, aren't they? Before they even jump in your facility.
Yes. Yes. And by the way, Bryan, remember that even though that they most likely, I'm going to say most likely, because something that if anyone is hearing this conversation right now, and you are, or you were with the FDA and you want to help us with the chat, you're more than welcome, because there are a lot of things that we do not know that is specific to the training as an inspector.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, I mean, if an inspector is there and the purpose of the inspection is a GMP inspection, and suddenly they realize that the company is not registered, or that the transportation practices are not the right ones, or that the company is big enough to be most likely above $10 million, and there are storage tanks on the outside. Oh, the intentional adulteration rule is applicable too. Of course, they're going to be checking no matter what for those other things.
Yeah, it's a good point. And really, I mean, just like you are preparing for this inspection, FDA is as well. And guess what? FDA has a file on you. It's past inspections, it's past 483s or warning letters. Those are going to come up. And FDA may not be forthcoming with what information they have when they're going to that facility. But in that statement there, you touched on something, Jose, that was very important, that is part of the opening process that I want to make sure people understand. Is there's two types of visits for FDA, isn't there? There's GMP and for cause. What are the two types? What are those two types of audits from FDA, Jose?
Okay, so a little bit of research, Bryan. Whenever companies are being audited, okay, and this is FDA, I'm not sure how this is going to work with FSIS, but in FDA cases, depending on the regulation that is applicable to each and every single company, the FDA has a compliance program. The compliance program is some sort of, and I'm going to say this without having the precise knowledge, but this is my interpretation. So anyone from the FDA that is hearing me, I'm not an expert. But they do have something that is a compliance program, and I believe that this is some kind of a guidance on the things that will be checked during the inspection. Okay, each compliance program has some sort of they call that what is it? Product assignment codes. I have a note here. Product assignment code, PACs, and each program has many different PACs. So, for example, to your question, Bryan, the PAC for GMPs is 03040. But if you are going to be audited as Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act inspection, is a legal inspection, not an inspection for regulation. That's my understanding. It's going to be 03040 A as in Apple. That A means that is an inspection against the law, not the regulations. And then if you have the same number, L is a limited scope, same number, F is a full scope, and so on. And there are many, many different codes for the human food program. I'm not going to be surprised if you have exactly the same thing for juice and infant formula and eggs and, all these other programs in the FDA.
Interesting. Yeah. And so when FDA is coming in, they have a specific reason for being there. Yeah. And The offices are arranged by district, and then they're assigned for these cases. And the GMP audits, to reiterate this, right, is so GMPs are kind of like a routine. Okay, we need to visit your facility every couple of years, and this is part of that. We don't have any specific reason that we're here. The other one is a for cause, which is, as you would expect, for a reason. So they have had consumer reports for illnesses, or there's something that has caught their attention that they want to follow up on, and they're very focused then on figuring out what's going on there. Well, how do you know this? Well, you ask them, right? This is part of why your opening process of how FDA enters your facility is going to set the tone for everything.
Yes.
So, Jose, when you come to the front office, and number one, in my example, as I was setting this up here this morning, this assumes there's a receptionist. And in a lot of plants now, there is no receptionist. It's like you hit the buzzer for somebody to come get you, and then somebody will hear it and go, right? And then they go to the front door and let you in. Who is that person? And if they go to that door, do they know what to do? If all of a sudden FDA shows up and says, "Hi, I'm FDA," and they've got their badge, and they say, "I'm here to do an inspection." This gets back to that training piece. So no matter whoever answers that door, they need to then know how to properly process that and say, "Oh, you're with FDA. Well, please come to this conference room, and I'll put you in here." And we will then get our representative to come and meet with you, and that'll be along here shortly. And then Jose, you as the quality manager are going to go up there in this scenario and then begin that process. Now, with this, a lot of times in our plants, Jose, we have at that entrance a copy of the GMP policies or no photography policies or confidentiality statements. And is FDA going to sign those things?
I'm not sure.
The answer is no. FDA is specifically trained to sign nothing. All right. Okay. Well, how do you do that then? So what you do is you do that verbally with that. So in this example, Jose will say that you're the FDA investigator and you're in the plant. If I come up to meet you, I would say, okay, well, here's our GMPs. Would you initial these that you understand these? No, I will not. Okay, well, let me read these to you to make sure that you understand them. And then you can then note that on there and say, verbally explain the GMPs and the confidentiality to the investigator. And then you can sign it, right? To confirm that they have done that. Reading Cortland's got some good comments going here. Duncan. So with that piece is, I already had referred to in this process that you have a process in place for where you take them. Yes, right? You need to set that up in advance. You just can't go into the building and say, okay, well, Mr. FDA investigator, I guess, well, let's see, our plant manager's not here, so I'll put you in his office. No, do not do that. No. Everything that is out, all information, that is fair game. You want them in a neutral conference room with coffee and water or whatever things you may need for it, and also a close by restroom. And with this process, you need to assign a person who is the designated representative who is going to be working with FDA during that audit. Now, part of that then is very important. So we've now introduced FDA into the plant. They're in the conference room. Outside of that conference room, there's a beehive of activity going on, right? So now all the managers are running around. FDA's here. Oh my God, what are we going to do? And everybody is trying to figure this out. Just like any other audit or any other visit, you're going to have an opening meeting. And it's very important that it's just not you, Jose, and the FDA investigator. You need all hands on deck. You want your entire management meeting in that meeting if you can do it, right?
Not only that, Bryan, the thing is that FDA is going to be looking to talk to the, and I'm going to put this in quotes, the owner, operator, or agent in charge of the facility. That is the person that they are supposed to be talking to.
Yes, very good point. And Cortland's doing a good job of explaining terms here and things. So the piece with the guns that I had referenced earlier, right? That's criminal. If they're showing up armed, that's a criminal investigation, and somebody's going to be arrested if those situations happen. Thanks, Cortland. So just like any other audit, right, you're going to do an introduction. You're going to be cordial. You're going to express your pleasure that FDA is there because you're very happy, right? You have a fantastic facility. You're very proud to show FDA your facility because you're doing very good things here. And you're going to be working with them, as you said, as the agent in charge or the representative at that facility. Next on that list then is talking with FDA and asking them, to your point, Jose, well, why are you here? Right? And FDA will tell you why they are here, right? Oh, we're here for a routine GMP inspection. This is part of our normal schedule. We're going to be inspecting your processes and yada, yada, yada. Or, right, we're here for a for cause. Oh, really? What are you here for? Well, we have some reports of consumers who are claiming illness with your product. Can I see those records? Sure, but they're going to be redacted. You're not going to have names or any information. It's going to be very, very basic. You're probably not going to get much out of that.
Well, okay. So let's yeah. Hold on. Let's fine tune a little bit there.
Please.
When they show up, they're supposed to give you a 482. A 482 is the form that the FDA has in place in order to inform the facility the reason for the visit. That's my understanding. Okay?
Yes.
So in theory, if you read that and you understand compliance programs and codes and so on, you are going to figure out what is the reason for the visit.
Yes.
Okay. So besides that, do you want the FDA to explain better the reason for the visit? Of course, yes, 100%. Not. I don't have any problem. Now, regarding the records, Bryan, and this is something that is in it's in the regulation. It's written in the Preventive Control for Human Food 117. Oh my goodness, 400 and something. No, 300 and something. It's in the section for record keeping. It says it's called, I believe, public information. I'm not sure, but there is a section that says that when the FDA is asking for documents, copies, or looking at documents, or whatever that is, if the FDA want to have copies, you need to provide those copies. Okay, yes. The documentation in the food safety plan, okay, is potentially subject to the specific requirements for record keeping. If it is subject to those specific requirements, the records belong to the FDA, not to the company, not to the manager, not to, the GFSI scheme that this company is following. No, those records belong to the FDA. Okay, yes. So when they say, I need a copy, you must give a copy, pretty much. Okay, now, if you give them a copy and they take those copies, now those copies are, can I say, according to GFSI, not control? And I'm going to use the same language that we use in documentation and in systems implemented for the control of documents. Yes, those copies are not control anymore. And the issue is that because it's a public act, those records are subject to the Freedom of Information Act. And anyone can go to it's not anymore the Office of Regulatory Affairs. Now it's the Office of Investigations and Inspections. That is a new name, according to the Human Food Program. Okay? So you may go to the reading room of the Office of Investigations and Inspections, and you may request, you need to pay. Oh, I guess you went already through some of that. You need to pay, but you're going to get a copy of all of the records that were collected during that inspection.
Yeah. Yep. And that is an important point. This is part of why this prep piece is so important, is everybody needs to understand your point. 100% correct, Jose. Anything that is under the regulation, FDA has a legal right to copy and take those documents with them. So what if you have trade secrets or formulas? Now, number one, FDA does not have legal access to your formulas or proprietary business information. What is your process for marking documents confidential? And that redaction process is not you, that's FDA. So your documents go into their system, And under FOIA, 100% correct. And a lot of people don't know this. Your competition, if they learn that you got an FDA audit, they can file a FOIA request and get all of your documents.
Yes.
And FDA is guessing as to what's important and what's not to your business. They may not get it right. So you need to have a plan in advance for that. So one of the things that you should be doing as well when FDA shows up and they're now in the conference room is you're on the phone, right? You're calling corporate or whoever it is that you've designated to let them know that FDA is in the facility. You should have a food safety lawyer on retainer. You should have other backup resources, other experts that you can call upon if you need to, and they need to be ready for you in that meeting and that investigation in case there's something that needs to be clarified or things don't go in a direction that you like. So you need to have those things worked out in advance. Another big thing that you need to work out in advance, Jose, and this is an interesting one, is okay, FDA shows up and you're running product. Do you keep running or do you shut down?
Oh, you need to run. Otherwise, I mean, there is no purpose for the inspection if the company's not running.
Yeah.
It's exactly the same, Bryan, as a GFSI audit.
Yes. Right. And FDA is there. And at the end of the chat here, I'll put in the link, the Investigator Operations Manual, and there's a brand new one. 2025 is out now, and Jose's been going through this. I'll put a link in for that. This is the Bible. This is what FDA follows when they're doing an inspection. So you need to understand what it is that they're looking for. So with that piece of it then, so you're finding out why they're there. You're continuing to run. If you have a policy in place that says we shut down or you weren't running in the first place, it was a down day or something like that, FDA is going to come back. They want to be in the plant when you're actually manufacturing product.
Yeah.
So that needs to be clarified early on in that process of how you're going to manage that and what you're going to do for FDA. Here's a good question. Okay, Jose, I show up for the audit. I'm the FDA investigator, and I come into your plant, and I tell you that I'm going to be doing an inspection, and you say, "No, you're not. I don't allow this," and you kick FDA out of the facility. What happens then?
Oh my God. Okay, that's a very good question, Bryan, because in the law, in the section for the prohibited acts, among a huge list of prohibited activities, you cannot refuse an inspection. That is a prohibited act and is criminal activity.
Yes. Yeah. And you will very quickly lose your registration with FDA and you'll be shut down.
It's a possibility. Yes.
Yeah. It's not going to go your way. It's a very bad idea. So after that initial contact, you've met them at the door, you've got them in the conference room, you've had your opening meeting, check their credentials. Make sure they are who they say they are. Just because they say they're FDA or USDA or what doesn't mean they are. They could be a criminal. Who knows? Check their credentials. Can you copy those credentials? No, you cannot. FDA does not allow that. There have been instances where FDA would allow that in the past, and people have created counterfeit documentation based upon that information. So FDA said, all right, enough of that crap. We're not doing that anymore.
Yeah. I mean, Bryan, look at this. If you ask for a little bit of evidence that, that is a person and that person has a 482, the form from FDA, oh my goodness, most likely they are FDA.
Yeah. So they've done all of those activities and you've got your thing in place, and now you're doing your opening meeting. And with that opening meeting, it's also very important at this point in time, and this gets into the prep piece of it as well, is explaining to FDA some of your policies, right? And explaining them and telling them a little bit about your facility. It's like, oh, okay, well, here at our facility, we make granola products. We make granola bars, right? Ready to eat, so high risk. Also, Mr. FDA, a couple of points that you need to consider. I am the designated representative for the facility. Please direct your questions to me. I'll be happy to answer those for you if I can. If I don't have the answer, I'll be very happy to find that answer for you. And in some cases, and this is an interesting thing as well, is you may need to get that request in writing. And there are specific instances where that's the case. And we'll kind of get into those a little bit as well, too. It's very important that you keep that in your back pocket. Another key piece of this is policies. No photography policy, no recording policies. What is your company position on this? Do you allow this or not? And why is that important, Jose?
Okay. So, oh my goodness, Bryan, I have heard a lot about the pictures. Okay. And of course, when I'm hearing from the FDA, the answer is that they are allowed to support with evidence whatever they are observing as a nonconformity. Mm-hmm. Okay. So watch out. I heard from in one of these FSPCA conferences on an annual basis, I heard someone from the FDA saying that the correct thing for FDA personnel is to take pictures of the potential violation that they are observing. Okay. Yes. Not grabbing a camera and start taking random pictures of whatever. There you go. There you go. So if that is the case, well, in theory, you are not supposed to prohibit that. Now, if you heard from lawyers talking about the same topic, lawyers are going to say that, well, you should do something to try to minimize the taking of the pictures because it's evidence of the violation, of course. Okay. So legally, you cannot prohibit the FDA to take the pictures. Okay, that's my take. That's my interpretation. That's what I heard from FDA. So this is what I'm going to say. Okay, can you try to do something in order to avoid that thing? Yeah, you may try, but I don't think that if you are doing the things right and that your system is fine and that you're working under sanitary conditions and your products are clean and your CCPs and your preventive controls are working fine, are they going to need the camera? No, because everything is fine.
Yep. Now, this is kind of, and the photography one is a great example, there's gray areas. And to your point, yes, from FDA's perspective, they are 100% adamant that they have the regulatory right to do that.
Yes.
It's not that clear cut. FDA piggybacks off of OSHA. OSHA absolutely has the right to take pictures. And FDA has made the case that under the regulations that apply in those areas, those apply to them as well. Food companies disagree. And it came very close a couple of decades ago in New York State, where two large food companies were going to sue FDA and take them to court to settle this and decide whether or not they have the ability. FDA withdrew the case because they didn't want it settled, because they thought, I'm just interpreting here, but my opinion is FDA was worried that they wouldn't win that argument. So FDA absolutely will say, I have 100% right. I can take pictures of violations. Okay, this is where the food lawyer comes into play. This is why it's very important to have a good food safety lawyer. What is your company position? You could have a position that's kind of in the middle, right? It's like, okay, yes, we allow photography. No, we absolutely do not allow photography. A lot of companies have policies in place that say, we will allow photography if we give permission, right? Because you have contractors who come in and take pictures, but you have a process in place where corporate has to grant a request to take pictures. And that may be a good compromise with FDA because you want to work with them. You don't want to piss them off. And on that case too, what a lot of companies do as well is if FDA takes a picture, they take pictures too. And they'll try and recreate the exact angle and everything that FDA is taking the picture from for their files. I have been at conferences, Jose, where FDA has given presentations and they will show on the presentations in the PowerPoints pictures inside plants. And I look at those and say, whose plant is that? Who in this audience is going, that's my plant, oh my God, right?
Yeah.
It's somebody's plant and they're showing it publicly. And remember FOIA. Remember FOIA.
Yes. Yeah, because those pictures somehow are going to be part at some point of the Freedom of Information Act.
Yes.
I'm not sure, but they could be.
right? And you'll notice in our talk here, we're spending a ton of time talking about the upfront process. This is extremely critical, as was made here in the comments. Okay, if you have a fence around your facility, number one, good, you should. And let's say that you have a guardhouse and FDA is stopped at the guardhouse. Do you want that guard checking the credentials and signing them in at that point? Oh, lost Jose there. I'm sure he'll be right back. If you want that first point of contact at the security gate to be, oh, here he's back.
On my internet.
There we go. FDA didn't like what you were saying, Jose. They cut you off.
No, my internet for some reason flickered, and I just got kicked out.
Yeah, it's probably like a little thunderstorm or something. Who knows? But so what we were saying was, if you have a first point of contact, a guard shack or something, if they're checking credentials, good, but they need to be trained on how to do that and what to do if FDA doesn't sign, because they're not going to. And then also the next thing that they need to do is pick up the phone and call you, right, that representative at the plant, and say, FDA is coming into the plant. Please meet them at the front door. All right. So you need to be aware of that. So your opening meeting, Jose, you're having your opening meeting with FDA, right? Everybody is there. Plant managers there. All the managers are there. If you can get the supervisors there, a little harder, but fantastic, right? You want to show 100% support to FDA. You want that FDA investigator going, wow, okay, this is good. You do not want you and FDA sitting in a dark room, broom closet, because now you are telling FDA that you don't respect or value this person.
Yeah,
and that's a bad way to start things. So, as we talked about earlier, okay, Mr. FDA investigator, what's the purpose of your visit? And you'll go over this information. You're also finding out the mood. In FDA, they're people just like us. So are they in a bad mood? Are they grumpy? Are they surly? Do they not want to be there? Is there something else going on that's going to color this inspection? Try and talk with them on a human level. Your overall objective on this, Jose, is to not be adversarial. So the analogy is,
yes,
you want to be working with them and you want to convey that to FDA. If you're in a conference room, sit on the same side of the table as them. Don't sit opposite, right? That's confrontation. All of these small persuasion tools and tricks that you use in other audits apply here as well. You are here to help FDA, and you are very, very proud of what you're doing in this plant, and you're all smiles. You're very happy that they're there. That goes a long way. So another big point here is, earlier I'd said in our example that we're producing a ready-to-eat product. Is FDA going to be doing a swabathon during this visit? This is the time to ask.
Yes, and actually, Bryan, that's a very good point, because according to what is written in the Investigations Operations Manual, the instructions is that they're not going to tell you at the entrance.
Right.
Okay. They are just trying to, okay, are we ready to go in? Yes. Okay, let's go. And as soon as let's go, they open the suitcase and they start pulling these swabs and they start swabbing.
Yeah.
And within that, sorry to interrupt, Bryan, but I was teaching a class Wednesday and Thursday. And one of the things that I was telling people is, look at this. Analyze the way that we are performing sampling and testing in a food facility by using a statistical approach. Okay, I'm going to use math now. What is the significance of swabbing a 4x4 area on a table that is, 5 feet long times, I believe I used 2. So 5 times 2 in feet is equivalent to 1,440 square inches.
Okay.
So statistically, if you divide 16 by 1,440 and you calculate that, you are sampling 0.471% of the surface. My question is very simple. Is that significant? Because from the risk assessment standpoint, that also means that assuming that the test result is giving you, okay, this is clean, you still have what is called in risk assessment residual risk. What is a residual risk? That 99.98% of the surface, you have no clue if it's clean or not.
Good point. Well, and also is what is the methodology for swabbing? Are they using a little cotton swab, or are they using a big sponge? Right? That's going to impact it too.
Yeah.
So in the IOM, the Investigator's Operations Manual, to your point, right, is they're going to swab during the production run. They're not going to swab at the beginning when your equipment is nice and clean and sanitized. They're going to wait 4 hours. They're not going to tell you. And all of a sudden, more FDA people show up outside. Right now, you've got a team going in there doing the swabathon. This is another example of where you need to prepare in advance. Are you going to pull duplicate samples of everything that FDA samples? So if FDA goes and does a zone 2 button and they're swabbing that, do you also swab it? Now, part of what you want to do then as well too is after swabbing takes place, clean and sanitize that swabbing spot to break that linkage. Okay, let's say your company decides to pull duplicates of what FDA is sampling. Do you actually test, or do you hold those samples? So let's say in your company you have the policy of testing. So FDA goes in and pulls 100 samples, you pull 100 samples, you send it out to your outside lab for testing. FDA comes back and says, oh, good news, we found 0 presumptive positives in your facility for Listeria and Salmonella. Yay. Uh-oh, we found 2. We had 2 hits on our own environmental samples. Do you have to tell FDA that? You have to work this stuff out.
Yes.
Because now you have a contaminant.
Bryan, look at this. Using the same example, okay? Imagine that you are not sampling food contact surfaces, that you are sampling zones 2, adjacent to zone 1, okay? And you mentioned that they're going to be swabbing a button, and you're supposed to be swabbing also that same thing. Are you going to swab on top of whatever they already swabbed? Are you going to swab on the side? How much area do you have in a button that was swabbed in order for you to, those things are, we need to think about this before we start going into that case of having the FDA inside the facility. And by the way, which is something that, I was thinking about explaining this at the end, but we should have a program, a procedure just to take care of these situations and improve that procedure continuously.
Yes.
Because the fact that, hold on, just one more thing, Bryan, because if let's say that we are going to be, our environmental monitoring program says that we're going to take 5 samples or 10 samples once per week. Okay. The Investigation Operation Manual of the FDA says that for Listeria, the ideal is 100 or more.
Right.
So if you look at this from math standpoint, statistically, who is more likely to find the organism? The FDA with 100 or more in one shot, or someone that is taking 10 swabs in a week? Come on, Bryan.
All right. Well, and we've done shows on this too, Jose. Most environmental sampling programs for production facilities were written 10, 20 years ago, and they've never changed.
Yeah.
And they're sampling zones 3 and 4. Where is FDA sampling? 1 and 2.
Yes.
So now you don't even have data to compare. You are in trouble. You need to work these things out in advance. So another key point here is, all right, so in our example, Jose, you are the designated representative for the facility. You need to be on that FDA investigator like glue. You need to be with that person everywhere they go, within reason, right? If they say, hey, where's your restroom? I need to go to the restroom. Do you need to go to the bathroom with them? No. But I have heard of issues where FDA investigators will use that as a ruse. And they will say, I need to go to the bathroom. That was down the hall, right? You're like, yeah, go ahead. And then they start wandering. and start talking to people, and they'll go in the employee locker room and start looking around without you, right? They're trying to duck you. So use common sense here, right? Don't stand outside the stall. Okay, Mr. Investigator, you done? No, of course not. But do not leave them unattended. Do not.
Yeah.
Here's this is an interesting question. Should we use duplicates? Should we attempt to duplicate the specific genus swab test method used by FDA if known? Please share your expertise. Cortland may have some comments on this as well. Number one, right, we were talking about this on the prep for this, Jose, is right, all methodologies need to reference back to FDA BAM, Bacteriological Analytical Manual, AOAC methodologies, et cetera. You need to use an approved methodology. Is FDA going to be plating? No, right? They're going to be using a rapid method. Are you going to know what the lab is using for a particular test? Maybe, if you ask FDA. You shouldn't deviate from the methodology you're using already, right? Because now you're going to get apples and oranges. So let's say you're using a rapid method. Let's say you're using the Vitus from bioMérieux, and you decide to switch to a different methodology, and you're going to do ribotyping and what have you, and switch to a brand new methodology. Well, is that part of your processes? Has it been validated? Now you've got a whole new can of worms. So don't change.
Yeah.
So an important point to remember here is part of your mindset, because a lot of what we're talking about here is diplomacy and negotiation and persuasion. It's just like everything else we talk about on the chat. It's just not your documents. It's your methodology of explaining your documents and everything else. And part of the explanation process here is you need to make sure FDA understands, because they're just like you. They have a boss. You have a boss. You have limitations to what you're allowed to talk about or not talk about, or there's things that you need to ask permission to go into more detail. So let's say that you have a very, very aggressive, very strict no photography policy, and FDA is upset about this. Your position on this is, okay, well, Mr. FDA Investigator, I totally get what you're saying. Frankly, I have a lot of sympathy for what you're saying, but I have a boss, and my boss has told me that these are the rules. Tell you what, let's talk with my boss. Please put your request in writing. That's important. FDA doesn't like that. There's reasons for that. And we'll see if we can get an exception for you on this basis. Again, you're working with FDA. It's very bad to take a position where you're fighting with FDA and say, no, our photography policy is this and you have to follow it. Well, now you're just setting up a confrontation. Your job is to facilitate and work with FDA on behalf of the company and explain the policies. You didn't write the policies. I'm the quality manager. I'm just doing my job just like you. I'm here to help you, but I can't just do anything that you want, right? And FDA is going to understand that, aren't they?
I believe so. Yes. I mean, it's like you said, Bryan, is a very gray area.
Yes.
As of right now. Just one little point about the question that you popped up before that I was asking for our expertise. If someone, assuming that the person that was asking the question is required to follow the preventive control for human food, if you go to 117.165, the verification activities, and you go to the section of environmental monitoring, assuming that is, a required thing, and then people need to follow this, that section says that your environmental monitoring program must identify the organism of concern. Mm-hmm. It's not the analytical, an indicator organism. Is the organism of concern. Right. So the answer is yes, they need to identify Listeria monocytogenes as the organism of concern.
Ooh, but I mean, is it genus species or is it just genus?
It says the organism of concern.
Right. So and this is again where you need to work things through with food lawyers.
Talking about the specific hazard.
Right. You need to understand the hazard, yes. And so those things need to be worked out in advance.
Yes.
So right now, so part of this too is, okay, so you've done your opening meeting, you've gone over all these rules, and now FDA wants to go out and tour the plant.
Yeah.
FDA goes out in the plant and they're looking around and they start talking with someone. Hey, what are you doing here? Please explain to me your duties. You need to understand what's your company's position on that. I don't want to say correct position, but the position that protects you the most is you're the company representative and all questions need to be directed to you. Not FDA just can't go around randomly asking people questions. OSHA? Absolutely, OSHA can. OSHA can ask anybody anything they want. They can take them to a conference room and block you out and talk directly to that person. This is not OSHA. This is FDA. You are the representative of the company, and you need to work out in advance how do you diplomatically work with FDA to make sure that they understand that. So if FDA starts talking with a person and saying, well, what do you do here? And when's the last time you found foreign material in the product? Excuse me, Mr. FDA investigator. I'm the company representative. Please direct all questions to me. Mm-hmm. And your staff needs to understand this, and you need to practice this because it's human nature. If someone asks a question, you want to answer it. Right?
Yeah.
But that's not the right way to do it. And remember, FDA is trained on ways to get information. Back to your point, Jose, gray zones. They're trained to get information, and they're going to wander out of areas, and they know that they're not allowed to do that. Another point I missed on the opening meetings is FDA has to establish with you their authority. So to your point, Jose, with the law and the regulations, FDA has to have authority in the facility. FDA may not ask you directly, but they'll say things like this. Mr. Sabal, we're here to do an investigation. So we're here in the state of Pennsylvania. Do you sell products in other states? Right? Yes, we do. Why is FDA asking that? They're asking that because of interstate commerce. FDA has authority at the federal level. If you say, for example, here in Pennsylvania, we only sell our products exclusively in Pennsylvania. FDA doesn't have authority. Now, you may have secondary channels that you don't know about. So this is gray area, and you have to be very, very careful with this. You need to make darn sure that if you're in this special situation where FDA doesn't have authority, that you understand that. Is FDA going to know that in advance? Absolutely. So the chances of this happening are very low. Very low.
So don't lie,
Yes. Yeah, and so they'll also ask for records in special situations such as dairy products, the pasteurized milk ordinance. They have access to records that are very specific to those regulations, so pasteurizer charts and things of this nature. So you need to understand what FDA can ask for and what they can't ask for. And to your point earlier, Jose, anything relative to your food safety plan and your food safety processes, 100% they have access to that. And to your point earlier, they can copy that and they can take it with them. Anything outside of that, they do not. So you need to understand those demarcations of what FDA has authority to view and what they do not have authority to view. And a lot of times, this is something I work with companies on a lot, I'm sure you do too, is a lot of times that information is all mixed up together. Pull it all apart. Do not. So for example, if you have a form for a CCP, so let's say, for example, metal detection is your foreign material critical control point, and you've got records on your metal detector checks and hits and corrective actions and blah, blah, blah. FDA can absolutely see that. But on those forms, if you put other information on there, such as check weights and seal checks and other things that are not, FDA can see those too because they're on the same form. Don't do that. Separate that information.
Yeah, the recording of the information of the process should be separated.
Yep. Another key point here that people miss out a lot on quite a bit, and I'll be curious to get your opinion on this, Jose, is so your preventive control qualified individual under your food safety plan, under FSMA, FDA, they have to review food safety documentation and sign off on that documentation for release. A lot of companies do a bad job at this, don't they?
Yes. And actually, that is a very good point. You know what, Bryan? Because look at this, and I'm going to start this conversation by not talking about food safety, but talking about risk. Okay?
Yes.
When we need to address risk, risk of hazards happening at the facility. And I should not be limiting only to hazards, because the definition of adulteration includes anything that is preventing the product from being in compliance with its own specification. So if the product contains a little bit of a residue of food grade grease, the product is adulterated by default. Okay, so taking that into consideration, the point here is that we should be doing whatever it takes in order to ensure 100% that the product is, it's in full compliance with its own specification. And in order to reduce risk, the severity under the conditions of manufacturing a product or a process, whenever you analyze the severity, that severity after the analysis is not going to change, because it's a severity associated with the hazard. So that severity is going to become a constant. Mm-hmm. And if you want to reduce risk and you need to assess the severity and the likelihood, I'm not going to multiply, I'm not going to add, I'm not going to create any kind of a matrix here. I'm just going to say that we need to evaluate those two things. The only way that you can reduce risk is by reducing likelihood.
Yep.
And that is plain risk management. Okay.
Good point.
So you are supposed to set up very effective critical control points, preventive controls, GMPs. Yes, you are supposed to have very effective programs. Now, in systems, when you control, you must verify. So the risk is reduced by the control after the control is verified. So without losing the verification portion of the system, we are not 100% sure that that risk was reduced properly.
Correct.
So who's the only one that can sign the review, the verification of the controls? In the preventive control regulation, is very clear, is the PCQI or someone overseen by the PCQI. In the seafood HACCP or the JUICE, is the person that took the class for that regulation. And in GFSI is the person that is responsible for the food safety plan.
Yep. So we're getting a little short here on time, so we're gonna have to move along here. So very quickly, a point here I want to make on that side is never, ever, food safety documentation, never falsify documents. Goes without saying, but I'm saying it now. Never do that. So now the final piece of this is your closeout meeting. And you're going to go into our FDA. Did they have any findings? What did they locate in your facility? Are they going to be issuing a 483, which is, things that you need to fix? There's going to be things that FDA may not list, and then there's things that they put on the FDA. You should address them all, because they're all going to go into your file. And FDA writes it says, yep, we're going to write up a 483, and they do it right there or whatever. And then they hand it to you, and they say, please sign this. What's your company policy? The policy should be sign nothing. Don't initial, don't sign. It's your company policy not to do that. Just like FDA won't sign anything. You should not either. It has been shown in court cases that signatures or even initialing of documentation on behalf of FDA, if they have records, that's an admission of guilt. Bad idea.
Oh,
you have to be careful on that. So follow-up activity. What are, if FDA has other things that you want. So earlier example, they do a swabathon. Okay, where are the samples going? What are the control numbers? When do we expect results? Because you should be holding all of your product from that production, all of it.
Yes.
Okay? You need to decide that in advance too. Hold your product. When are those results going to be available? How do I get those results? Who do I reach out to get this information? You need to get all these type of things associated with that. And just like the opening meeting, have a very strong closeout meeting. And again, bring all of your team in to hear this information. It's going to help you in your role as the quality manager, as the PCQI in that facility, because now the other managers in the facility see just how important this process is to that plant and making sure that it's successful. So don't rob them of that. Have them at that meeting.
Yeah. And just to support your observation, Bryan, how do we do all of this? oh my goodness, a very, very, and I'm going to say very again, very strong program for corrections and corrective actions.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. And so as I promised, guys, I got a couple links here. So here is the brand new shiny FDA Investigators Operations Manual. And I'm also going to here, you talked about risk a lot here, Jose, which is something we've been talking about a lot. And I put together, and this is on LinkedIn, this is really fun. I put together a 10-question quiz on food safety risk. So you can go through this and look at this and say, okay, well, in my company, what's kind of my risk level of where we're at into the company? So this will give you kind of a quick overview of risk within your company. So that's a lot of fun. So go out and take that quiz. It's pretty cool. And any closing thoughts for everybody, Jose? So much to cover.
Okay, so but you know what? Yes, Bryan. So I mean, it's fundamentally the end of each and every single of your food safety chats. Let's do the right thing.
Yes.
Okay, and by doing the right thing, I mean, let's have a very effective food safety system. Let's keep on checking our systems constantly. Try to set up some statistical preventive controls in order to not wait until a deviation happens, but attack the deviation before it happens. Be proactive, not reactive, and have a very effective program for the assessment of risk and attacking risk in your operations.
Yep, absolutely. And as you can tell with our chat here today, is that 80% of your success in an FDA inspection of your facility is going to be your preparation in advance.
Yes.
Preparing information, practicing, training, getting ready for this, and understanding all these processes, and even things you don't think about, like Cortland's pointing out here. Cortland owns a lab. He knows this stuff. This happened to me where FDA had, it wasn't FDA, it was a state lab, had a contaminated sample, and they blamed me for another issue. And it happens. It does happen. So with that, oh man, we could keep going here, but we're over time. So we're going to close our chat here for today. As promised, everybody, wow, ton of information here today. Jose, thank you, my friend. You are a wealth of knowledge. Greatly appreciated. And we'll close out our chat here, guys. And of course, we're going to be back here next week at the same time on Friday at 8 a.m. Mountain Time, 10 a.m. Eastern for the next chat, where I'll have another encyclopedia of knowledge like Professor Sabal on our chat, and we'll continue our discussion. But in the meantime, have a great weekend. Enjoy yourself, and we'll do it all again next week. So thanks, everybody, for joining us. Thanks, Anna. Good to see you. And we'll be back here. All right. Thanks. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Jose.
Bye. Thank you, Ryan.